Hello and welcome to Comics Tuesday. And today we're going to be talking about big crossover events, like Convergence or Secret Wars. But we're not going to be talking about Convergence or Secret Wars. So first off, why do crossover events? And this part's pretty simple. You take a few of the most popular characters that a small group of people are writing and producing. You put them together, and it draws more attention, gets a bigger audience, makes more money. And even from the writing perspective, when you're trying to make a story seem big and important, it helps to have these multiple parts of your fictional world coming together. Kind of widens the scope, makes the threat seem more legitimate. But there's some ways that crossovers frequently go wrong. The biggest one is the fact that they're bigger money makers. It's just too tempting to go and do one crossover event and another and another and another. And so the style of storytelling tends to be abused and overused until all of a sudden it's impossible to find just a normal ongoing story. And it's really irritating. And sometimes to just make the thing happen, characters are written out of character. And then that's disappointing to their fans. On top of all that, it gets confusing and it's hard to keep all the continuity straight. That's not to say that crossover events are a bad thing. There's plenty that are great. And so let's talk about some of my favorites. Maximum Carnage. I'm a big fan of Spider-Man. This is one of my all-time favorite Spider-Man stories. And it's not universally popular. But among those that don't like it, there is one very frequent complaint. And that is the story is 14 parts across 3 titles for around a year, and all these factors made it nearly impossible to keep up with and actually follow the story. And I say they're not wrong, but here's some perspective. At the time this story came out, I was a very small child, and so I was just starting to read comic books, and I ended up picking up about half of the story sporadically. A little bit later, I see a retelling of it in the video game, which is awesome. But it wasn't until years later that I not only started to read Spider-Man very consistently, but also picked up the collected edition of Maximum Carnage. And in that form, reading it beginning to end, no interruptions, no waiting, no confusion, it's a very well told story. Because you have all the popular characters from the Spider-Man books all teaming up, doing cool stuff, fighting some very villainous villains. And meanwhile, there's some good examination of Peter's character. And, on top of all that, I think it very successfully manipulates and plays with the mood of the reader. And that's why it's one of my favorites. Crisis on Infinite Earths / Infinite Crisis from DC Comics. Now this story is the prime example for a story being written for the sake of continuity. Because since the years that DC had started, it had just gone on so long and had so many different series and so many small details in the continuity conflicting with one another. This story serves the very pragmatic function of just mixing it all up and resetting things. But as far as writing a story like that goes, this is the right way to do it because it's also very interesting. Ultimately what it comes out to is you have all of DC's characters coming together and, standing up, teaming up against a big bad guy. And it feels like it matters because things change. There are consequences. And then you kind of have the added bonus that now you don't got to worry about continuity so much. And so I just think that both of these events were very successful. Also, special place in my heart because this is one of the key factors in DC's very successful kind of trend of replacing their heroes with legacy characters. Shout out to my boy Wally West, Archie vs. Predator. And this crossover is a joke. Now it's not an insult though, it's a very funny joke. And it's a sort of joke that has smaller jokes inside of it, and it's just well written throughout. Invincible War. And this is an Image comic, and it actually just takes place in a couple of issues of Invincible. But this is really notable because it is probably the most notable crossover of Image heroes. And what Robert Kirkman put together here is really admirable. Most attempts to mix together Image Books doesn't really work out because of the creator-owned nature of the company. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's good that creators can own their own things and have such tight control over it, but it isn't conducive to crossovers. But here is the exception. It really works out. And the plot of it is as such. Invincible is the world's most powerful superhero. So when an army of evil Invincibles comes along, of course it takes every hero on Earth to stop them. And so you have Spawn, Savage Dragon, Cyberforce, and at least a dozen other quick snapshot cameos. And it all feels very well connected and deserving of so much cooperation and crossing over. And one other thing that really just plants it firmly in the center of my heart is the Top Cow characters appearing in this crossover. They're represented very well and end up looking super cool. I mean, you have Cyberforce teaming up and holding their own against an Invincible, and you also have Sarah Pazzini with the Witchblade fighting another Invincible and just tearing him to shreds. And speaking of Top Cow, my very favorite crossover event ever is the Top Cow one called Artifacts. And Artifacts is the Top Cow's version of entire universe reboot, where they're starting all over as far as the continuity. But it's very unique. It's one of only about 3 crossovers Top Cow's ever done. And I think that shows a real reverence and just carefulness that they take about actually putting all their stuff together. You know, they wait, plan it, do it well. We're going to be getting into some mild spoilers now. So the plot of Artifacts is this. The villain of the story is trying to collect all 13 of the artifacts, which are the source of most of the superpowers in the Top Cow universe. And by bringing all 13 together, he is going to end the world. But by the end of the story, he's succeeded, and it's all over. And then you have the really interesting situation where our heroes are having to figure out what to do next. And so yeah, interestingly enough, this is the type of story that's been done before and since, but this version just is unique and it carries all the characters well, while telling a very interesting story and serving its technical purpose. And so, as comics continue to come out, it's a fact that crossover events are successful as far as drawing in an audience, making money, and so it's going to continue. And what I think is that publishers really need to just pay attention and be honest with themselves about how all the crossover events have gone. Because there have been some truly atrocious moments. But at other times, they've been able to accomplish what the publishers need, that being money, brand recognition, while at the same time giving the readers an interesting story that they're going to want to read. That's going to not only get them interested in the event, but in the line of comics following. So let's just hope to have fewer Convergences or Clone Sagas, and more Infinity Gauntlet or Artifacts. But that's just about it for today. And so now it's time for the viewer question of the day, which is, what are your thoughts on new number 1s? My take on it is this. If it is a character's first time headlining a book with whatever power set they currently have, then that's a number 1. Anything short of that, do not put your fucking number 1 on that cover. Just don't do it. But what do you think? Leave it down in the comment section, and don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel. Come back next time for Comics Tuesday. Next time on Comics Tuesday, Peter Parker is sticky all over his entire body. So how is that any different from me on a Saturday morning? We'll talk about it next time. Thanks for watching.